wanted to ask first, what effect do you think the pandemic will have on the investment management industry? I know that you've had a chance to talk to the leaders of many investment management firms, and I just wondered what kind of feedback they were giving on that question.
Great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Will. I'm delighted to join you. We did have a call with about 25 asset management CEOs from around the world, and there were really a number of observations. First of all, the number one observation is how smoothly and effectively we've moved to a working from home virtual world. So the time that we held the call was probably about 4 weeks into it globally, and I think that marked transition from phase one to phase two. So phase one is really getting set up to work, making sure that people are safe. People were organizing, getting family members home, bringing family members within houses, taking care of loved ones, sort of putting the precautions in place, as well as setting up 2 monitors and 2 people in a household working together, or people figuring out how to work all day, every day into that first phase. So I think the second phase really marks making it work. And that is an interesting phase because people are really starting to talk about the impact on their people, the fatigue and weariness that sets in, some of the operational limitations. As smoothly as it went, and we can go virtually, there's a really big difference between working virtually and from home by choice and then under a lockdown. One of the neat observations by somebody was, though, that it wouldn't have been able to be accomplished, frankly, if it hadn't been a global imperative. So there's something there in the necessity of all of us putting our attention and working on something all at once. And that might be a playbook that would be interesting to tackle some other problems as we go forward. So that's the first thing, that working from home works. The second is clearly how clients are responding in this obviously very stressful time, both from a human perspective, but also from a market and portfolio perspective. And the general tenor is really one of calmness, that clients are actually taking the long-term view that portfolios that have been designed to do certain things are performing that way, irrespective of some of the shocks. Of course, that is the sign of a well-designed portfolio, to anticipate the unexpected and hope it behaves well, or trust that it will behave well. And so client behavior is really quite strong. And then the third aspect is the actual running of the businesses and the operations. And I would say that firms seem to be really identifying those that were critically important for them to be doing and carrying on with them. So even for us, we had undertaken a strategic plan and are carrying on with that process. You can see that firms are perhaps even accelerating some of the plans that they had in flight, whether that's technology, the way they're structuring their operations, or talent management. And then finally, I think all identified the need to really highlight and emphasize the culture that they have in their organizations and how that plays out with employees. So you won't be surprised. I think the world is looking at how we conduct ourselves in something that we're all globally in together.
Yeah, you mentioned talent management there. What are people thinking specifically around talent at the moment?
Irrespective of there being lots of people available for employment, talent still remains something that is cherished, valued, and precious. And so I think what we're seeing is a real attention to what are cultures, what kind of leadership is needed in a war for talent. And one of the interesting observations that one of the CEOs had on our call was that talent or leadership is emerging in unusual spots, and not leadership that had necessarily been identified. So I'm sure there's something there that has got me thinking deeply about how we assess leadership. Talent, as you know, the investment profession remains very important in the economy, in the whole financial ecosystem. But the underlying nature of the investment profession has changed. So when you and I would have started in the business, it would have been classic players like portfolio managers and research analysts who would have been pouring through paper-bound annual reports and 10Ks and the like. And now we see that the composition of the industry is really dramatically changed, and that change is accelerating. So portfolio management skills, the classic inputs, are still relevant and valuable, but now we see data scientists, we see risk managers, we see the use of data really augmenting the way that we run our portfolios, right? So we have more data and the ability to process it in more comprehensive ways that are the classic inputs to portfolios. So I think that integrating those types of people into the system is, I think, a bit of an experiment and quite an interesting one.
And if the composition of the workforce is changing, as you described, what does that mean for the code and standards? Do they remain as relevant today as they have been before? And also, do you think that this crisis will challenge them in ways that we haven't foreseen?
Right. So I think the code and standards become even more relevant because if you have a homogenous group of people who basically understand the rules of the road and there are systems in there, well-established systems to kind of keep them in place. I mean, it doesn't work perfectly, which is why we have the code and standards, but by and large, it does work. So if you think about the different players now and ensuring that the outcomes are intended when you inject new players in is quite interesting. The other big transition that's happened, certainly in our careers, is that from the dominance of the institutional investor, to generally defined pension plans, to the dominance of the individual investor that now has responsibility for their own financial security. And that is just a huge transition because people really often don't have the capabilities or skills to be able to run an effective portfolio. So they really necessarily have to rely on financial advice and financial advisors. And that does require codes and standards, putting clients' interests first. So if there's one trend I do think that will accelerate, that is the conflicts of interest in the commission scheme. I mean, different jurisdictions have different responses to that. But I think certainly our upcoming trust study shows that innovation, influence are really important for clients. And having financial advice improves individual client outcomes. And that's probably because they better understand how their portfolios are designed, what they're designed to do. There's professional oversight navigating or reconciling competing priorities that clients often have. And so you can see that really does require code and standards. The system is not thoroughly skewed in the favor of the client. And so I think that the code and standards become even more important.
And how do you think this crisis is going to change CFA Institute itself?
So we had undertaken a strategic plan. I think we are facing the same challenges that firms are. So we are modernizing our CFA program, which is sort of the globally recognized standard for education, and the charter is. And so we're modernizing our CFA program, how we put together our curriculum, understanding the changing needs of the industry, how we modularize it, how we put it together so that candidates can learn better, and then finally how we deliver it. So we were already in flight to do computer-based testing. You won't be surprised that COVID-19 has had us accelerate those plans and to explore other opportunities that we can use in a world of social distancing and other physical restraints on how we deliver the exam. But it was unprecedented in our history to have to defer for the very first time our June exams, and we hope to administer them in December.
Great. And a final question, I guess, Just, do you think this is a sort of a good time to be a CFA program candidate and a CFA charter holder? I've been thinking this through, and there's a lot more focus on sort of winners and losers in markets, and obviously that's a sort of an environment where people who have that analytical skill are maybe begin to be able to use it more than they have done in some previous years.
So I mean, I'm biased, obviously. I am a charter holder and I lead the organization, so I'm biased. But I have really, that's made me actually think more deeply about why a charter holder or candidate should really think long and hard about the value of what they're pursuing or what they have. And when markets are stretched and have gone on for a long time, in a really positive trajectory, it becomes difficult to discern the really good from the okay, and sometimes even from the bad. And we're in a period now, I believe, where, having well-educated, ethically oriented investment professionals that pursue excellence is critical. And that's our mission writ large. And we have the credibility, the tools, strategies, ethics, standards that back that up. So I think for those of you who are interested, from your subscribers and viewers who are candidates, couldn't be more important. The opportunities in the market are going to be really, really interesting and tricky. And that's when you want people who deeply understand the market, to continuing to assess and find those values and opportunities and put them together in portfolios that meet clients' objectives.
Great, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well and be safe.